All right. Thank you for joining us for the perfect ticketing experience. I'm Seth Wilson, Marketing Director here at Cloud Radial, and joining me is our CEO, Jeff Ferris, and Director of Business Development, Ricky Caccini. Just to make everyone aware, we have another webinar on September 17th covering our September product updates. You can sign up for that one at cloudradial.com/events. A recording of this webinar will be posted on YouTube at youtube.com/cloudradial. If you haven't already, please subscribe to stay up to date on everything Cloud Radial. But today, Ricky is going to talk to us about what makes the perfect ticketing experience and how Cloud Radial can help you deliver it. How's it going, Ricky?
Pretty good. We didn't get hit by a hurricane, so I'm pretty happy about that.
All right.
Yeah, not good. Sorry, hearts to Louisiana. Feeling real bad about that. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us. We're talking about the perfect ticketing experience, and there's a lot that kind of goes into this. So let's start off with where we're coming from, why we have any right to talk about the perfect ticketing experience, because I know most of you guys are obviously neck deep in that world anyways. So starting off with, what is Cloud Radial? Well, we're an integrated account management platform. We're really trying to reduce your costs while improving your sales efforts and client retention through a bunch of different features that we have built in. For those of you, I know some people come in kind of familiar with Cloud Radial is, some people just kind of peek in there. Ticketing is a part of what we do. It's a very core pillar of it, and we'll kind of see how that ties into the greater client strategy. So we're a branded client portal. We're all about that transparency, and we're really focused on trying to take that ticketing experience and kind of up it from what you're kind of used to traditionally. And we'll take a look at all the different features within Cloud Radial, but also generally speaking that you want to have to kind of make sure that your ticketing experience is just top notch. So aside from who we are as a company, who am I to talk about any of this? Well, I am somebody who's been in on basically every side of the IT business. I started off as an in-house technician, low level, like ticketing support in-house, anything from resetting passwords all the way to like some very light server work. Eventually I got bumped up to doing some PCI management for five guys on the West Coast. I did a lot of setups for Hilton hotels. So I'm kind of used to boots on the ground, actually doing those tickets, getting told to execute them, receiving them, and kind of the usual back and forth there. After that, I moved over and I became a copywriter and a creative director at an IT-specific marketing agency that worked with MSPs. Kind of started off doing stuff like writing websites for MSPs, managing their paid search, doing stuff like their analytics, email strategy, you name it, which gave me a kind of a unique flip-flop from the technical side to the marketing sales side. And then finally, after that, I came here and I became the director of business development at Cloud Radial. And currently, I am the lead trainer and onboarding specialist here. So I help people set it up, I help people configure this, and I help people kind of walk through what the strategy would be, and we build out processes to help usage. So it's kind of interesting for me to have this conversation. It's ultimately why I was chosen to have this, because I've been on a lot of different sides to it. So I think I really have some good cred to talk about what the good ticketing experience is from both non-technical and technical sides. So let's talk about why we're here, right? So why can Cloud Radial, or how can Cloud Radial help you get the perfect ticketing experience? But even more so than that, what does that really even mean? What is a perfect ticketing experience? To figure that out, we're gonna have to start from basics, and forgive me because I know most people know this, but let's take it from the top, right? What is ticketing supposed to do? Why does it exist, and why do we do it? Everyone knows that theoretically, ticketing is a really simple objective, right? You're supporting your users with that ticketing to get them the answers they need. Now, that might be a problem, that might be a request for service, that might be just a simple inquiry, right? But it's just getting people back to their work, getting people back to what they want to do, and maybe even their lives if you've got some pretty clingy clients that have a lot of dependency on you. So more so than all this stuff, it's really about getting people back their time, right? And time is limited, time is precious. It doesn't matter if you're the one-man owner of a one-man shop, or if you're a Fortune 500 CEO. Kind of the adage applies: time is money, and these people don't have enough of it. So you really don't want to get stuck in that ticketing problem where you're waiting on problem resolution. You just take a bunch of time and it wants to suck a whole part of your day out. So I found a pretty neat quote that I thought fit well into this presentation from Robert Half. I mean, this is a pretty famous one, that people are wasting an average of 22 minutes a day with IT related issues, right? Which is insane, because it says 91 hours a year doing that. And the funny thing is that this isn't in talking about like how long it takes for them to get their ticket resolved or anything. This is purely dealing with some kind of IT related issues. So that made us think about like, okay, well, clearly there's a time issue here across all different fronts, across all different businesses, which is a huge thing to address. So is the issue that people face really one that's about how fast they can get help or how fast they can get that resolved? And really it's the matter of the latter. It's the resolution. It's not so much how fast they can put in a ticket, right? So interestingly, we did a webinar just last week where CEO Jeff Ferris was bringing up the concept of mean time to ticket versus mean time to resolution, right? And to put that in plain English, we're talking about the speed at which someone can put in that ticket or just request their help or answer the question or whatever, or ask the question versus the time that it can take to get actually resolved. And both you as the IT provider and the clients are really looking for the mean time to resolution, because that's what the good stuff is, right? But it's very easy to fall into the trap of looking at mean time to ticket as a benchmark for good support. It's certainly a part of it. Don't get me wrong, putting in tickets and getting answers or finding a quick way to get that answer is important, but that's just a fraction of it, right? So most people, and I'm sure many people are here for this reason, they have users that just seem to adore putting in tickets via phone and email directly, because we're not gonna lie, that is always gonna be the fastest way of just saying, help me now, click done, right? But the fact of the matter is that really doesn't do anything for them on their end. That's because it's an inefficient way to get answers. It's an inefficient way to get the problem resolved and ends up wasting even more time. But, right, when you have additional resources or an alternative and you can provide something else to help kind of fix that ticket, you end up upping your value as a partner and improving your ticketing experience overall. So Cloud Radial, obviously, as we're talking, is built to do this, but I want to show you how that kind of ties into the whole equation. So let's take a look at something a little bit more visual. So let's focus on the top line here. This is the usual model of how tickets work, right? Ticket, they decide they need a problem, they go put that ticket in and notice that, yep, it's pretty quick to put that in. Now, the time it takes to gather that information, some users may be really good about providing everything they need, others probably not, right? And then you go to the processing, the resolution, and then notification. That's kind of a chunk of time. That can vary, obviously, depending on your standards and processes and everything you have in place. The bottom line is what we're really trying to focus on and talking about today, right? And this is something you can achieve with Cloud Radial. So it's taking the time that they would typically spend in putting the ticket. Now notice that our create a ticket on the bottom timeline is slightly longer. It's true, because we're going to give the clients an opportunity to put in information with their problem, right? Which is going to cost them more time, undoubtedly, but they're going to save so much more time than having to go back and forth and providing additional information. So it's a lot better than the traditional ticketing pipeline, right? And even more so than that, and part of a grander strategy, we're also talking about a way that maybe you can skip that whole process too, right? Because if you can ideally, maybe not for every ticket, right? But for some tickets, you can bypass that completely and give them the answers without needing to put that in. It's not a loss for anybody, right? You guys don't lose because they didn't put in a ticket, and they don't lose because they didn't get to talk to you. Everyone walked away saving time and actually being a little bit more profitable, right? For following old time is money. So when we think about the perfect ticketing experience, I'm going to be talking about two main things, which is the two sides of the ticketing coin. Now, the perfect ticketing experience only comes together and is only a thing when you fix both sides, right? And for the most part, I think people assume the client-facing side first and foremost. They're thinking, how do I get them off the emails? How do I get them off the phone calls and everything, right? Which is certainly a part of it. So let's start with the client-facing side, the more popular side, and we'll see how you can kind of address that and how that all works. So, okay, let's say heads is the client-facing side. We're trying to give them something that is a better interface for them to interact with you in the first place, with your brand, right? And that can serve as a really important differentiator between what they've seen before, because emails don't do a very good job of making sure that people know who you are and what you're like. It's just kind of a back and forth exchange. And Cloud Radial obviously is built to do that as well, because it's brandable, so it looks really good for you. The second thing is putting that ticket in context with everything else that you do for them, because you undoubtedly do a bunch of different stuff, and making sure that you are emphasizing that and proving more than your company is more than just tickets, right? Building the relationships and focusing on the greater strategy helps you kind of pull out of that and focus on other areas that are more lucrative, but also in general just more helpful. And then lastly, as a one-stop shop for the tickets, right? Nobody wants to have to go back and forth and check their emails, and I deleted that, and who knows. We're looking to try to set a baseline as a single pane of glass. I hate that phrase, people use it all the time. A single pane of glass for transparency to deliver a pretty modern experience. I mean, again, CEO Jeff Ferris loves the analogy of a power company, and you don't want to sit down and kind of have to go through a bunch of details with everything, every little nitty gritty thing. Sometimes the best answer is going to be to log in and check things on your own time. So that's a lot of client empowerment that Cloud Radio can do, but that's a big part of ticketing in general, right? With regardless what platform you do. So taking these kind of facets of what a client ticketing experience should be like and moving that on, inevitably we want to talk about how we can kind of automate that. That kind of comes, that's near and dear to the IT heart, because that's a process that helps us do our jobs, that helps us reduce that mean time to resolution. And let's think about the king of automation, right? Which is, IT is close, but it's not, right? It's fast food. And if you think about it, the fast food industry is basically perfected their ticketing experience, right? They're able to deliver insanely repeatable quality at scale with just this remarkable consistency. And I put a little idea at the top, right? It's not about how fast you get into the line, but how fast you're getting the food. It's the same thing, right? Not the mean time to ticket, how fast you can jump in the Chick-fil-A line, but how fast you can get that chicken sandwich. So on the head side of their coin, which is interesting, right? The customers are interacting in large scale and smoothly, even when there's a large influx, right? And they don't pride themselves again on how fast they can put you in that line, but getting you the hot food. And we're not focusing again on the mean time to the ticket, we're focusing on the mean time to the resolution. So practically speaking, how does that work in Cloud Radio, right? Well, we're talking about the ticketing experience in the usual sense, kind of like I showed you in the traditional model. Instead of going to email or phone call directly, here's how Cloud Radio handles it. Here's a screenshot of actual, an actual ticket being logged in Cloud Radio. So from directly in their portal, alongside a bunch of other features, which we'll kind of talk about in a little bit, they can browse their catalog of tickets or service requests, and they can go put in their specific problems and just a few details, right? This is not crazy overwhelming, but it's still pretty helpful, kind of like, taking their order, basically. And it's done in an interface that's modern, it's clean, it's familiar, it's not overwhelming, it's not something that is going to be super hard to parse out. I mean, there's literally categories that they click through, and once they select that ticket and they fill out the relevant fields and submit it, that's what's going to get captured on your end through your PSA or maybe through your email-based ticketing platform to you as IT providers, right? So just that simple act of capturing and sending along the details of what they need and want for that ticket dramatically cuts back that back and forth, which ultimately is literally saving time and money because you're not having to spend time going back and forth. Now, that's not all of it, right? For Autotask and ConnectWise, and probably future PSAs will be able to do this as well, we're pulling in the ticket data to show them a simplified view, like kind of like an iPhone chat log. So they're even getting pop-ups to let them know when tickets have been updated or when the status has changed. So they're being notified that the stuff is happening. So the visibility on their tickets is increased tenfold, which is dramatically better than having to hawk over their emails, right? So as a part of that ticketing experience, we're shedding some of that needed light on what's happening there so they understand both your process better and they can see tickets getting resolved faster. And we'll also, I think a couple slides from now, I'll talk about it, but there's a big question that always comes up for us for how do we get adoption in the portal? And having something that is trackable that they can see move is a big part of it, because that is something that people like to see. They like to see where things are at and how things are progressing, and they like to be able to pop in and check. And it's better than sending an email because, again, it's all siloed in there and they can, multiple people can have eyes on that. Something else though, right? So yes, we talked about there's a traditional ticketing experience, a little bit different because we're giving them a little bit of info, but we're trying to paint a bigger strategy overall, right? So not just filling out forms all the time. Like I said before, the ideal thing is if they can solve their problem without ever having to put in a ticket. And really, whether they know it or not, both parties really want this because that's going to save the maximum amount of time. So another piece of the ticketing puzzle that Cloud Radio can do is put your resources in context with everything else to kind of help that ticket get solved faster. So this is something we talked about last webinar as well, about a new feature to Cloud Radio called FastPath. So if you press F1 inside the browser, it's going to pop up that little search bar at the top, which is going to be an autonomous way for the client to get their help, right? So when they do that, they're going to get taken to this, which is something that a lot of different, I guess, corporations, organizations do now. When you search a phrase or something, it's going to try to bring up as much of the stuff that can be relevant and helpful to them as quickly as possible to try to get them that help. So in the example in the screenshot above, right, somebody searched Outlook won't start, just raw problem. So FastPath is going to show them any relevant thing that you define, it's going to tag that for you and show it to them, such as, hey, do you want to go ahead and put in the Microsoft Outlook, I'm having a problem ticket? It's going to read that and present it. Or it's going to help them try to solve that completely. Maybe they don't really have a problem with Outlook not starting. Maybe they just need to know how it works for Android, right? Which is one of the quick start articles that you've already had in your portal. Maybe none of that stuff's going to help, and they really needed to find something online that could take 2 seconds rather than having a whole interaction with tickets. So on the right-hand side of that, there's also the web results, and you can define any third-party knowledge base to pull the web results from. In this case, the default one is going to be like a support.microsoft, but you can change it to be support.google, or better yet, even your own knowledge base to showcase your value as a partner and show them what you're bringing to the table besides just the raw form, right? And we're not at the level of a lot of like big corporations. I'm sure if any of you guys have ever been to like a Walmart.com or something like that, you try to put in a ticket and they make it as hard as possible for you to call them and contact them. That's not the case. We want to offer that kind of sweet spot of we're giving them alternatives and we're helping them solve it, but we're also not going to frustrate them, and we're going to give them a path to mean time to ticket really quickly, because we still want both parts of that equation in play. So beneath that search bar, right beneath it, there's a little text that says need help and didn't find an answer, open a ticket, right? Useful in case somebody doesn't find anything. And when they click on that, it's going to let them put that in really quickly, and it's going to not frustrate them because they've gotten a way to find their answer like that, right? Now, probably those of you watching as an IT provider are kind of thinking of this as a no-brainer, which is like, of course, you want your clients to be doing this, you want your clients to find it more helpful, but how do you get that point across to them? And how do you present something like this as a brand strength rather than like a, hey, we're going to make you take 5 more steps, because that's the fact of the matter. But it's about recapping and showing all the benefits that you know are being given to them, right? So let's consider the client adoptionist that I talk about. Why would a client ever want to use a portal in the first place, right? And these are very tangible things that you can show. Well, first of all, because they're getting 24/7 self-service, right? So the power of the relationship is in both parties' hands now, where typically it's been one-sided, where even despite your best intentions, it always kind of feels like they have to reach out to you and you have to kind of go back and forth and back and forth. They can go in there and do multiple things like log their tickets, see their progress, have other resources to access. So it's both kind of people's playing area. The next thing is that they can still get to you and they can still talk to you about building relationships. I think a lot of times when we talk about the ticketing experience, it's inevitable that people come to us and they say like, hey, this feels a little bit impersonal. This feels like something that maybe might cut me off or my clients will like because they build the personal relationships for you. And I think that the idea is not to cut that out completely and say, hey, just do the portal. It's to cut out the mundane stuff that doesn't really drive those personal relationships, so your clients can save the meetings and the conversations for you about things that matter, which if you ask my boss, who's right there on the call, he's going to say it always comes down to saving money, making money, or reducing risk, which is really what they need from a partnership, right? And we'll talk about how that kind of ties into the concept of QBRs and meetings also at the end. And really importantly as well, like we mentioned, tracking and logging that ticket data so nothing slips through the cracks and there's plenty of visibility. And that's really great even for an admin wanting to see everything across their organization, having that there. They don't have to go crawling through emails or CCing people or anything like that. But most importantly of all, just like we talked about, it's all about going back to doing what they need to be doing or what they want to be doing, saving time, and that is your reduced mean time to resolution. So giving them options to do that. So that's cool, but that's probably what you guys came here expecting and knowing. The important side of the flip side of the coin is also on the IT provider side, right? So if you can get all that stuff, Cloud Radio's got that, it's like cool, but flip it over and all of a sudden it's like, how are we handling that for you? How do we improve the ticketing experience for you? Well, for your own terms, if you can do what we showed you with the forms, you're coming in and getting better information on tickets in the first place to reduce that back and forth. So specifically having everything you need to execute the ticket right from the get-go is going to save you a bunch of time to also free up your technicians and experts, right? Same thing for the routing and automation. So because we're not tracking this in the traditional, here it goes to this email and that's it, at least with certain PSAs, we're also seeing the power that routing efficiently can help you get the most out of your analytics and the most out of your PSA, which is going to start from that ticket creation process. And it's going to be done from the beginning. So technicians don't have to waste time logging and making sure that this is in the right category or subcategory, all that stuff. It's handled directly from entry, right? And then lastly, giving you an actual option to act on that information. So not even just stopping at the logging it nicely, is using Cloud Radial as a way to give you options to proactively script that information out and pull it and use other third-party sources to kind of make some really cool stuff as far as automation. I don't want to give it away, but we'll see in a sec. So same analogy, we're taking it back to fast food. Let's flip it up, right? And we're not using fast food as a derogatory term. I mean, we're literally talking about the power of automation. So when we talk about on the other side of that drive-through window for fast food, sure, the client sees the hot, fresh chicken sandwich or burger, whatever, coming out in 2 seconds, but there's a ton of stuff going on in the background. And in their case, they're using every resource they can to streamline that delivery, right? So just about every industry does this, but IT is really fortunate in that literally we're built to do that with tools. I mean, tools come with, hey, connect me to this and do this, do this, this, this. So it's like begging to be done in the first place. And Cloud Radial is kind of the place that puts it all together for your ticketing, right? We're able to kind of condense that all together. So when we talk about how the speed and why fast food is successful in general, is because the accuracy and predictability and scalability of what they do has been honed, right? Their processes are down. They're able to bring together all those different things to deliver it smoothly without having to make people wait a long time, right? Mean time to resolution for a burger is minutes, whereas going to an actual sit-down restaurant takes a lot longer. So in that sense, IT can really do the same thing. So if you think about how Cloud Radial does it, we really kind of have to look at how we standardize and scale the ticketing process with those configurations. So let's actually take a look at a ticket in Cloud Radial and see what the kind of things you can do on there are. Right, so here's an example of some of the simple stuff, and this is a cut down screenshot. There's more to it in here, but this is kind of asking the smarter questions to begin with. So with Cloud Radial, you're able to configure those questions the way you like. So you can set up anything from simple questions, check boxes, or just a text field, and then you're able to even set conditional statements to those. So try to get a lot of information, even if it's seemingly overwhelming, but try to be as simple as possible, right? Do you need a new laptop? No. Okay. Do you need a new laptop? Yes. Oh, then another field is going to pop down going, which one of our models would you like to select? Click, click, click. And something like that. That way it's a nice flow. And the truthful downside here is that, yes, there's no magic pill. There's no secret sauce here. This does take more time for the client to fill out. But you can see that if they take an extra 2 minutes, they can save an extra 20 in back and forth emails. If I say 20, if they're answering back and forth, sometimes if they don't answer for a bit, they want to request, things get lost. It saves a lot of trouble by doing this just right now, right? Instead of an email that just says help. So one of the features that we're going to talk about today is also going to be that script and JSON field ID, which is a new feature, right? So we're going to be able to label some of these question fields with that specific script ID, which is going to come into play for automation that's really powerful. So I'll also show you that in just a sec. So let's move on. Besides just the questions we're asking, we're also going to change the way that they're routed. So again, you're getting the most out of your PSA. These are all customizable by ticket. You can do this for a catalog of tickets, so it kind of helps you scale this process in general. And you're going to help the client get the information to the right place so the right person can help them on the first pass. That's really important to make sure that they're getting their ticket resolved quickly. So from the boards and queues, which is up top at the the left-hand image, to the subtypes, to the source and all that kind of stuff, that's all done right here. And you can even define workflow approvals from here. So it can send a ticket off to get approved internally before it ever reaches you, which again is a lot of time saving, and that way it's self-contained and the client has power in their own approval process as well. So it's kind of a nice little flow that we can get you to. And you can see on the right-hand side image, besides the JSON webhook, we are giving you lots of opportunities to send this information out in ways that matter to you, right? Teams webhooks, Slack webhooks, Flow webhooks, which is really interesting from an automation perspective, to try to get some of the smaller issues and tickets provisioned out. Something like getting an Office 365 license created. Another thing that this backend ticket can do when you're kind of going through and setting this up is a checklist, right? And I mentioned in one of the previous slides that one of the sides of the coins, or at least both sides of the coins, need to have some kind of automations and options to act as something that gives you the right information, and that's critical for achieving the perfect ticketing experience on both sides. So for the tech side, right, something that Cloud Radial can help push you in the right direction is having a scalable process of how to resolve that ticket, making sure that the technician knows. So back that all up, right? Let's think about the fast food example one more time. when we take a good look at the processes that are running in fast food, in the business of fast food, not even for a specific one, we're finding that the reason that they're able to scale and perform, whether you're in Kentucky or Berlin or wherever, right, they all operate the same way because they've standardized the processes and figured out how to get that across in the same way, right? So all franchises really work off the same franchise manual, and they use standardized equipment, they use the same training, et cetera, right? Now, obviously IT is different. It doesn't have the luxury of offering the same goods every single day. You don't have the same tools as every single provider all the time, although kind of with stacks potentially being similar. And because of that, you're able to kind of tie things together, and there's really no reason why you can't bring that all together with the same logic to apply that to having a shorter mean time to resolution. So the checklist is particularly unique because it's relatively simple, but having a checklist of tasks that can sync directly to the PSA helps the technician troubleshoot and solve the problems in a repeatable and scalable way, right? That you can actually measure and improve on, saying that step didn't work, let's do this instead. Oh, that made it faster, we fix it quicker from now on. So if you standardize that experience, you're setting yourself up for scalability and success in scalability, which means that the brand new guy you hire tomorrow can be just as good as the grizzled veteran because they're following the same steps, right? Now, of course, maybe the grizzled veteran is going to be able to go off script a little bit, but for the most part, you're giving them a pathway to success. So that's going to free you up as the technicians to do whatever you want to do because you can hand it off to whoever. And that also gives your more experienced people or the more strategic people power to spend time on strategy. They don't have to spend time doing stuff that's relatively mundane because the support structure has been built from the inception of the ticket, right? So this is another really exciting thing. This is brand new as well. This is a little bit more advanced, but totally relevant, right? There's also an option now within Cloud Radial to include a PowerShell script, and I might throw this to Jeff depending on if I don't do it justice, but mapping your fields here and variables in the ticket based off that JSON script or even by itself is going to help a technician even further because, like I mentioned earlier, we're giving them the power not just to see this information and, hey, follow this checklist, but actually use this to help you solve the ticket, right? So to be clear, by the way, Cloud Radial is not running these scripts by themselves. We're not executing this and just running willy-nilly, but this has the power to create that script for you, attach it to the ticket, and give the technician the step to go, hey, third step, run this script, and that'll do it. But it's the same thing as I said before, right? You're giving the power to the newest employee to be as effective and use all the knowledge of the veteran from step one, from day one, right? We're managing to mature and scale the organization in an unbelievable amount. Jeff, just checking, do you have any other spots to say? I was worried I wasn't going to do this one justice, but let me know if that's fine.
No, you're doing great, Ricky. Keep going.
Okay, cool. He usually does this, guys. He's like, oh, you're good. So if we keep going with automation, right? This is a step further than that, but this is really cool stuff, and this is certainly not something you have to do. I will never say this is the ultimate thing that a brand new person looking for a portal needs to get, but it's really interesting that you can grow into this, right? What we're looking at here is the power of automation taken to the nth degree, right? So we talk to plenty of partners right now and prospects too that are really into the notion of self-service to a degree, right? I'm talking about wishing that the client could press a button and the client gets exactly what they need without having to manually keep doing the same process over and over again. That kind of wastes both parties' times. And again, we're not talking about losing the charm and the day-to-day like interaction. We're talking about the stuff that really is just boring, like click, run this thing, do this, and be done with it. One of the new features that Jeff added in here and his team is going to be the ability to add the JSON webhook URL into these tickets. So what will happen is that data can be grabbed from your automation or integration tool of choice. In this screenshot, that one on the bottom left there is using a Pipedream, but something like Zapier or Flow or anything works as well. We're sending that data out there, which means that you can take that data and automate a workflow to instantly provision a license or order a laptop or set up a user, whatever, with a click of a button, right? Without you ever having to do anything, the user just gets it, click, click, click. So that's going to put about a ton of time back in both hands, and that's going to be really impressive for your technicians, right? So that's something that one less thing they have to worry about, and they can focus on the tickets that do require attention, because they're always going to be those, can be spent, focusing on that, focusing on the ones that build the relationship any further.
Yeah, let me just chime in one other thing. We got a lot of feedback over the last year really from, partners wanting to try to push the boundaries of automation. And, some of the PSAs or some of the RMMs out there now have a more API driven approach, so they can do things remotely on a workstation based on a triggering webhook. Zapier is pretty strong. Now you've got Ingram Micro and some others out there with distributor APIs to provision Office licenses. And so a lot of the stuff that we've done is really try to instrument a first step at connecting the pieces together, right? So again, if all the information comes in, the next question is, where does it go and how can we make it as seamless as possible? So if it needs to be a password reset, if we can just simply forward that information on to an RMM, which can then in fact trigger that function, or make it simpler for the technician to generate the script, at the end of the day, that's going to enable automation. I don't think we're finished with this, because I think we're going to see a lot of good input from the partners. But I think it's a good first step to try to build some of those automation sequences from user to Cloud Radial to API to your own processes, either the internally developed in an Azure instance or a third-party service provider.
Right. Yeah, and keep that in mind too, guys. I mean, when we talk about all this stuff, Cloud Radial is constantly evolving, and we actively take suggestions. We talk about this all the time on how to improve this, and always feel free, especially existing partners watching this, always have an ability to set their ideas out on the roadmap. So if you're even seeing something that's turning some gears in your brain after this, throw us an idea. It'd be great. Play around with it first, please. But yeah, so if we're headed back to the kind of same mirrored thing, right? We did the heads of the coin. Why would the client want that? This is a little bit easier, but let's state this as well. Why would you want to have a port? Why would you want to change your processes? Because there's a lot of reasons to it. I think the first and foremost, one of the simplest things is because it gives you a chance to build a client experience, right? And remember, this webinar is definitely about ticketing. It's talking about the perfect ticketing experience, at least in theory, and also how Cloud Radial can do it. But generally speaking, because Cloud Radial is a portal that does a bunch of different stuff, it's something tangible to demonstrate to clients, right? It's something that you can show and sell, and you can walk through what your interaction with them is going to be like, what power is going to be in their hands when they start your relationship, which is really powerful versus like, hey, email me, or hey, give me a phone call. It's an incorrect statement to say that those things are more personal, because they pick up the phone, but then they get worse service. So it's like, so it helps people internally understand how you're presenting yourself, and just making sure that you can align yourself really easily, because you're sharing kind of a shared commonality. Let's both meet on the portal, do your tickets, and we'll do this and we'll do that. The second thing that's really important is taming the chaos of disparity, which sounds very dramatic, but I thought I was really proud of myself when I wrote that, which is really just a fancy way of saying like, hey, make yourself scalable, right? Learn to deliver something that is repeatable and something that is successful and be able to be measured and improved upon, right? That's all really that it is across every client. And lastly, because something like this gives you a place to offer greater context in the relationship, which is probably one of the most important points here, right? So not one person listening to this webinar, future or past, or somehow past, future or present, is going to want to stuck with ticket. You're going to want to get stuck with ticketing in the first place, right? I think that's probably fair to say. So all the stuff I said today is fine and dandy, but remember that the real business relationship between you and the client isn't happening necessarily in the ticketing part. It's happening where you bring in the advice to never have the tickets come in at all, or resolve some things at scale, or something that maybe the ticket opens up as part of a bigger discussion. So it's something that brings you in as an expert for your advice as the IT professional, and not in the way that you're provisioning an Office license, right? That's what we're trying to really talk about, getting out of the way with automation and making this a self-service thing, among other things, but I think that that's the core idea. So getting down to the perfect ticketing experience is really about freeing both parties, right? You're freeing both parties because both parties need the time. Both parties need the time as money, so money, right? So now you can go off and do proactive, what we always represent as account management, and you can focus on those strategic things and actually build those relationships, because you've got time to it. Your mean time to resolution has been shrunk down dramatically because you've got all the stuff that you need to actually do it successfully, but now you have time for it. So kind of a riff on it, right? At the bottom, it's more time to resolutions. It's now you can take longer on the stuff that actually matters. So a key process to this is replicating the process, right? Again, our homies over in fast food have done this with so many different things, but can you build a franchise manual to success, right? And your franchise manual, you're loud typing. You're loud typing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was on mute.
I was doing this whole thing. I felt a real lion's heart speech, and then I heard the clickety clack, and I was like, cherry reds, oh, blues, I guess. Anyways, so can you make the newest member of the team just as productive as the newest veteran, as the grizzled veteran, right? Can you scale that? Can you give the same quality to your biggest client as you can to your smallest client? And can, you know, with this, you can spend more time on your biggest client, but can you provide the same high level baseline quality content? Can you measure that success? Can you improve on it, right? These are all things that it'll take to replicate the process. And again, can the client and the team tangibly get more time and say, yes, before we were doing it like this, now we're doing it like this, and I actually see the benefit from it. So if you can do all that stuff, congratulations, you've got the perfect ticketing experience. But that's still not everything, because ticketing is this much of what you do. It's important, and it's something that brings us into the greater part of the conversation of what is the IT experience in working with your clients. And usually people come to us a lot for ticketing because that is the easiest part, the most tangible part to kind of present, right? Here's how this is going to work. Here's how you're going to get help. Here's how I'm going to resolve your questions, your concerns, and your requests. That's all kind of right there. When we talk about that in a greater scale, this is something Cloud Radio does. We're putting that ticketing in context of a client intranet, in context of training, right? For anything from security training to software training, just giving them a platform to learn, and education kind of tilt to it. The reporting side of things, can you make all the other stuff you do for them besides just pure ticketing visible to them to increase the visibility in the portal, but just the value that you're offering to them? Automating your QBRs and VCIO stuff. We talked about this a couple webinars ago. We did a webinar on the perfect QBR experience, which is really handy, or the perfect, I believe we call them MORs, right? Mutual opportunity reviews, which is kind of what this is building to. And then even ongoing for that, to increase the communication you have with them, the stickiness that you have with them, so they have a reason to interact with you over and over again. It's kind of important to understand that, again, ticketing, while really important, is just a fraction of the bigger strategy in general. So that is, I think, when you put it in a greater context like Cloud Radio can do, I think you end up with something really genuinely special that is provable to those clients.
Yeah, I think that's a real important point, Ricky. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get MSPs over what I would call ticketing insecurity, right? Which is, if they don't ticket, then they don't need me, and therefore they might leave me. And so what we're trying to do, in the ideal world, users only submit tickets when they need something, when they need to buy something, when new users are coming aboard. They don't submit tickets for problems because Outlook won't start, or they're having issues, because hopefully that's dialed in. So if we can reduce ticketing insecurity so that, again, an MSP's existence isn't based around the quantity of tickets they answer for a client, then we can basically free the MSP up to really focus on the things that move the needle for the end users, whether that's again, making money, saving money, reducing risk. The things that the MSP appreciates the most are the things that Cloud Radio is designed to address, right? And so if in the perfect world, users don't submit problem tickets, but they totally understand what the MSP does for them, and they totally appreciate where the MSP is taking them and how they're helping them drive their business forward in times of uncertainty. And I think through all of this, that's where the MSP can add the value and basically differentiate and maintain that long-term relationship and become that trusted advisor, not that trusted ticketing piece. Even though that's a part of it, it can't be the relationship, because that makes it a commodity. Advisories will never be a commodity. Ticketing can be. And so we want to move that MSP out of that commodity problem fixing issue. So.
Right. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk, kind of. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks very much for everyone who joined us live today. If you'd like to share or review any part of today's presentation, it'll be posted at youtube.com/cloudradio. Be sure to subscribe while you're there. And if you haven't already, register for our next webinar on September 17th covering our product updates. You can sign up for that at cloudradial.com/events. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for joining us, and everyone in the US and Canada, have a great Labor Day. In the UK, have a great summer bank holiday. Down under, I think it's Father's Day. So, but we'll see you on the 17th.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Good job, Ricky.
Oh, wow, thanks.
That was great.